pleasure for two former legislators to get a chance and come visit with us.
I bet.
Mr. Chairman, they really missed the per diem.
We do. Mr. Chairman, my understanding that you all wanted an update on sort of what our respective offices are doing with regard to the Human Services investigation into the 15 behavioral health providers. And I have something of an update for you all, still colored by the fact that we have criminal investigations going on, and so there are certain things that are difficult for me to talk about, but I do have some progress to report to you. I also have with me Jody Kern, who's the head of my Medicaid fraud unit, so if you have more specific questions, I may defer to Jody and my chief deputy, I will. Mr. Chairman, I think the first committee hearing that I went to on these was on July the 3rd. I remember it was July the 3rd because you all remember who were on that committee. It wasn't LSC, I think it was the Human Services Oversight Subcommittee. It went really late, and the next day was a holiday. So I know that this has been an issue of interest to you all since July. At about that time, our office received referrals from the Human Services Department for 15 behavioral health service providers indicating that they had found credible allegations of fraud. And I think a lot of you all, because we've had a number of meetings on this, sort of understand that process, but just quickly to overview that once the Human Services Department makes a finding of credible allegations of fraud, they refer it to the Attorney General's office for investigation. And so we have those. There's been a lot of discussion about whether the Attorney General's office encouraged or approved the referral of those cases. And I've tried to explain to people that's not our part in all of this. It really is up to the agency itself to determine whether there are credible allegations of fraud, and that's a term of art under the Affordable Care Act. I think that prior to the changes in 2010, that the federal rules required reasonable allegations of fraud versus credible allegations of fraud. I'm not sure that we all know what that means, but it's one of the things that led us to where we are. Once we received those, we recognized that there was a lot of cases to do all at once, and so we mobilized not only the 17 or so people that I have in my Medicaid fraud unit, but we actually brought investigators from other parts of the agency, and we're also working with other agencies, both state agencies and federal agencies, to increase the number of investigators that we have working on these cases. We're having regular meetings with our staff. My chief deputy meets at least once a week with my Medicaid fraud director, and they work on progress. And I can assure you that these cases, these 15 instances, I don't know that I'll call them 15 cases yet. There are 15 providers, and actually maybe 14, because I think one of them they went through the credible allegations of fraud and went through the check hole. They are indeed a priority in our office. What we have done to date is for all of the agencies that we're investigating, we have imaged all of their servers. We've obtained all the documents that we feel like we need to obtain from them. That's quite a project, as you might imagine. We have to get all of their servers. There are only certain agents that are qualified to go in and forensically image these servers and give the data for us to look at. If we had all of these documents in our copy, I'm sure it would fill up this room. There are tens or hundreds of thousands of pages of documents that our office has to go through. I think there's been a lot of discussion about an audit that was done by PCC. And in their audit, where they were looking for, to see how the system is running, they would sample maybe 100 documents or 100 files or something like that and look at it. Once it's turned over to us, we don't really have the luxury of only looking at 100 documents. We pretty much have to look at everything, because if there is no fraud, we won't be able to say that we were meticulous in looking at the records and found no fraud. If there is fraud, obviously, we have to be able to prove to a court or a jury what the chain of evidence is and how we get through those things. So I do want to say that the providers have been cooperating with us. It's not that we've had any trouble. I think that they all made their servers available. having some discussion preparing for this, I recall that you all had a report a couple of years ago that encouraged the Medicaid fraud unit and the Human Services Department to develop better sources of communication and such, and so I want to let you know that that kind of cooperation and communication has been ongoing, and we feel like we're doing a good job with that. I think that the question that you all may have the most is might have to do with, how important or how much does the PCG audit have to do with our investigation? And I think obviously the auditor is an expert at audits, and we'll let you know what they think. But I have one of my chief prosecutors, not my chief Medicaid prosecutor, but just my chief prosecutor, informed me many years ago of something that's useful to remember, which is a box of documents is not a box of evidence. A box of documents has to be gone through by qualified investigators and trained prosecutors to decide what can be used as evidence in court. And so we're sort of at that box of documents stage of the audit or of our investigation right now. And the audit is an important document in our investigation. It is certainly not the only thing that we would do in an investigation. We would and do and are interviewing people that are involved in the billing cycle, billing clerks, therapists, office managers, IT personnel, clients, client families. We get a fair amount of information that we have from what you would potentially term, and certainly what the Human Services Secretary would term as whistleblowers. And so we look at those. The audit itself from PCG was not a forensic audit, and so there are important pieces of information there, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands that the audit itself is not likely to be the basis for criminal charges. It's a starting point. It is a key in our investigation, and there's been a lot of discussion about parts of the audit that we've redacted whenever we released what we thought were public records parts of the document. And actually recently, about a week ago, we released some parts of the document that we think are very well covered by the law enforcement exception, but we didn't think that they interfered with our investigation. We understand the importance of the public's right to know and the legislature's right to know and everybody's right to know. So as we feel like we can release parts of those documents, we certainly do. But for those parts of the documents that we haven't released, it's really important for people to understand that the way we go into investigations is we assume that all of these providers, they have the presumption of innocence, and so we don't go into an investigation assuming criminal activity, but we know how to find criminal activity, and so we think that the information that continues to be redacted is information that's not only potentially important in finding whether there is criminal behavior, but it's also information that those people who have been charged with crimes or alleged to have committed crimes, that it's important to keep this kind of information within the investigation to protect their rights as they potentially move into court later on. We are trying to prioritize within the 15 agencies. I don't think that you can expect that we will have an answer for all 15 agencies on the same day. I think that we are in a variety of ways prioritizing the cases. In some cases, we're looking at ones where there are somewhat fewer documents to look at, but like I said, I think even in the smallest cases, there are probably 10,000 pages of documents to look at. I think that in what we've looked at so far, that there are items that might be called billing irregularities in an audit, or failed claims or something like that. I think that it's important for everyone to understand that the billing irregularity isn't necessarily equate one-to-one with fraud. There are lots of reasons that there can be billing irregularities, and we have to look into all of those. Obviously, fraud would be a case where somebody bills for a service that they know wasn't provided, and they do it with intent. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So we're hopeful to have to have some answers on some of these cases relatively quickly. I've been leery of setting a date because I think in a criminal investigation you can't set a date. And I will tell you that there are a couple that we've looked at where on the surface the information that we had seemed to be straightforward, but as we drill down into the cases, we find that they're always a lot more complicated than we anticipate to be. So we want to make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned. And so we don't have any cases, specific cases that we can report to you on today. But I know that my folks are making progress, and I know that they're working hard every day. And so I think that that's the close of my specific comments, but I'll be happy to answer any questions as best I can once the auditor gets a chance to finish his part of the presentation.
Members of the committee, I have a few prepared remarks, and then I'll also say a few questions. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a brief update. The Audit Act and the audit rule require the Human Services Department to submit its fiscal year 2013 annual financial audit by December 16, 2013. Federal law also requires that HSD receive a federal single audit which tests whether or not the department is expending federal funds properly. The way it relates to the current controversies before this committee are that as part of this process, staff auditors from my office are currently working closely with the independent audit firm that is conducting the annual financial audit, which is testing both federal and state funds. Due to HSD's significant expenditures of federal funds, my independent auditors are required by federal law to ensure that HSD has adequate procedures in a place to identify fraud and safeguard federal funds. Specifically, the fiscal year 2012, the department expended over $3.5 billion in federal funds. Specifically, HSD spent approximately $2.6 billion in federal funds for Medicaid and Medicare services. Pursuant to federal law and guidelines, there are certain audit objectives and audit procedures that apply to Medicaid clustered funds that are currently being expended by HSD. HSD must have the following criteria that we are looking at currently. They must have criteria for identifying suspected fraud cases. They must have methods for investigating those cases. They must have procedures currently developed in cooperation with other legal authorities for referring suspected fraud cases to law enforcement officials, such as the 15 cases that the Attorney General just referenced. Consequently, auditors are also required to test whether or not HSD has established and implemented procedures to safeguard against unnecessary utilization of care and services. For instance, are any of these providers excessive with billing for medical services that are not necessary? Auditors are also required to test whether or not HSD has established an ability to identify suspected fraud cases, an ability to investigate those cases, and an ability to refer those cases with sufficient evidence of suspected fraud to law enforcement officials. So as you can see, the questions that the auditors are, that are points of controversy right now that are being debated both in the public domain and before you in this honorable committee are also specific criteria already pre-established as an agreement by the state of New Mexico when they took the billions of dollars. So let me be very clear, the auditor is not just making up questions to ask just solely based on any type of conflict right now or current controversy. These are questions that need to be independently tested and reported back to the federal government through an independent and certified and unobstructed report. Procedures that the auditors are going to conduct and carrying out a test work include sampling of identified suspected fraud cases and ascertaining if the agency took appropriate steps to investigate, obtaining and evaluating the adequacy procedures used by HSD to conduct these reviews. And as the objectives and procedures related to HSD's audit, the auditor is required to gain an understanding of HSD's process for handling allegations related to HSD's Medicaid providers and to test HSD's adherence to those processes. As part of the test work, we've also received the current report that the Attorney General was referencing, the PCG report that has been publicly represented to have been relied upon. It is also necessary that we have undergone a report of that review, reviewed that report, and assessed any risks and impact to HSD and their financial affairs. We received the PCG report on July 26th following a court-ordered issued subpoena and an order to turn over any and all audit reports generated to PCG under HSD's contract with PCG. One area of compliance auditors are reviewing currently relates to HSD's verification and referral of credible allegations of fraud. In other words, under federal regulations, it is the responsibility of HSD to review all allegations of facts, evidence carefully and act judiciously on a case-by-case basis in order for allegations to be considered credible. Specifically, OSA has engaged HSD to review whether or not the agency properly verified and referred credible allegations of fraud related to the 15 providers identified in the PCG report. In the executive summary of the report of PCG, there was a summary where PCG did not categorize any of its findings as credible allegations of fraud and specified that a determination of credible allegation of fraud can only be made by the state of New Mexico. Therefore, we requested and received additional documentation from HSD regarding their process for verifying credible allegations of fraud related to the 15 providers. Staff auditors and staff from the OSA, along with the independent audit firm, are currently reviewing that documentation and analyzing that information. This process is currently ongoing, and auditors may make follow-up inquiries for additional information. We expect all of these items contain, Also, we have conducted walkthroughs in which HSD has been very cooperative with us. We've engaged with HSD staff related to their program integrity unit to gain a better understanding of how they were involved in the development of the referral. And also, my office has been in contact with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services regarding guidance from the federal agency to provide more guidance to us on this issue, and they've also provided some very specific guidance from federal authorities, which will be helpful as we continue to develop our conclusions for our report. And additionally, we've contacted PCG directly in order to get more detail from their process on how they conducted the audit, including the analysis and the extrapolation methodology that they relied upon as it related to their verification process. And you heard the Attorney General reference some of their processes in the report. Finally, my office issued a specific confidential referral to the independent audit firm identifying risks related to HSD's oversight and expenditure of Medicaid funds. And this included HSD's compliance with their own internal policies and verifying credible allegations of fraud. As part of this referral, we notified the independent audit firm of complaints and allegations and provided them to the independent audit firm. We directed the independent audit firm to include that in their test work, and they've also been involved with meetings with HSD, and everything seems to be going smooth thus far. We will expect that all these items will be contained in a referral that will be tested as part of HSD's 2013 audit to be submitted to our office no later than December 16, 2013. And as this process moves forward, I anticipate that we'll continue to work with HSD, CMS, and PCG, and we plan to expedite our review and any other release of risk review information that our office might provide. And after the report is officially released, that report will become public record immediately, and we'll provide that to HSD, the LFC, and DFA as required by law. I'll answer questions.